But on another note, the situation I speak on of certain subjects being protected by levels of connotation that may be negative or controversial or humorous. It's like a level of security cloaked around certain subjects and teachings and people, even to divert the attention away from progressing the truth of the matter in the situations. The similarity being the more genuine experiential overlap of circumstances that are adverse to very beneficial teachings and mentalities that are cultivated elsewhere, such as India. It would take a lot of people to get on that same wavelength of certain mentalities for it to have the effect to be beneficial. It's all about social engineering. Like a lot of Taoism or Indian teachings would say that, and it's, I pretty much agree with this. There's a balance set in the universe of what people would label whatever they wish to label as far as this side of it and that side of it. But it ultimately comes back to us as one guru would say, it's people being miserable and people living joyful. Well, when you have a situation that I'm sure exists over there, it's just, you have to really analyze when someone who derives their joyfulness from the misery of others. When you realize that there's really people that way, and they may or may not be directly around you, that's what really kind of dampens the progress of such a beneficial outlook. Because it's still ultimately true. Because it's all within how you may or may not decide to judge what you see. Because whatever good or bad is what you would say. It would be opposing to you or on your side of things. That's why I generally like to look at it like, hey, man, it's just a product of everybody being misled. I'd also like to mention, since I was bitching about the regular noise campaigns, that for the past probably 50 to 70 motherfucking recordings, there's been bugs flying around my fucking head, and now they're showing out extra. Who's gonna believe shit like that? They just increased about fucking 5-fold just from mentioning it. Like I said, man, it gets to a point where it's unreal. Like, am I really even fucking, is this even real, bro? I get to that point sometimes, and that's not good. Like, for everything to get involved this way, it's like it's a dream, dude. It's fucking stupid as hell to even take note of that perception, too. Because it just comes down to living such a small fucking life. The longer you live the same, especially with it being small, it's like you open yourself up to manipulation of your environment. It doesn't really matter if you can identify it, because it's fucked. Your environment's fucked. You can't even be in the environment that you're in, because it's not the environment you're in. It's manipulated. You can adapt all you want, and there's a lot of beneficial things that you gain along the way just from having to deal with it. Certain mentalities and even religious practices and ancient teachings that you find, you kind of start wondering, like, how do these motherfuckers even feel the need to come up with shit like this? And it's like, here it is, walking, talking proof of the need for it. But yeah, I'm just gonna fucking keep talking until I come up with what I've been trying to say for the past motherfucking month. I can't come up with it. Fuck the bullshit. I don't give a shit. If I want to goddamn talk to myself, I'll fucking talk to myself. A bunch of fucking creeps and weirdos want to listen in, they can. I don't give a shit about that neither. It's really just unfortunate, because there's a larger thing going on that I could really benefit from. And it's not a goddamn secret society. It's the universe. It's all the synchronicity around me. It's the wind, the clouds, the bugs, the birds, all that. How am I supposed to tune into all that with all this other bullshit around me? Like, look at me, tune into this, Fuck you and what you thinking about and what you talking about. We tired of listening. It's about us. We have to listen to you. Be considerate of us. And it's like, I don't have to know why you have to listen to me, because there's a more important thing going on. It's like there's dead people listening to me. It's like, and now y'all fucking it up for them. It's like I'm acting an ass I mean, that's just how I perceive it, man. Some people call it like ancestors or whatever. You know, it's all these levels of consciousness that didn't get re-embodied, and they're just in the same fluid that these people are fucking jamming their way into synthetically, all in the goddamn way. It's fucking retarded as hell. I don't agree with none of it. It's really a trip, man. I look back on all the different people that I had talked to in the past, most specifically the job before the job that I'm at now. All the different questions from all the different people that were asked and the responses that I had gave way before I ever fucking got an MP3 player and shit. It's really a trip, man. And even more a trip all the other people. And it's like I get to the point where it's like, why are these questions even being asked? And what really gets me is the answers. And it's like, they just came from the way I look at shit. I wasn't the kind of person who really looked into a whole lot of other teachings or religions or anything like that. It was just me adapting to some really heavy shit and how to cope with it. And it's like, every time somebody talking to me, I'm wondering, do they know what I'm going through or not? Or are they going through the same thing I'm going through? So I'm constantly in that vibration of occasionally double speaking and trying to drop game or reach out for more knowledge from somebody who might know more. And it's like, it's really a trip, because in the past year, all the things I've been looking up, it's like someone would probably perceive that I had really been a close follower of certain teachings and or people, because of the eerie similarities to some of the things I say being verbatim. I mean, it's different when you know you're parroting a quote from someone, but it's an entirely different situation when you come across somebody speaking that's like saying everything you said to someone else. It's like, what the fuck is going on, man? I mean, I've spoken on this before, but it just comes down to the same streams of information being able to be tuned into. But it really takes on a more mystical viewpoint when you see it as a stem of consciousness or something like that, because it's a representation of a reality that's already exists in a different light, because the circumstances cultivated the fucking perception, which cultivated the tactics to thrive within it. But yeah, before I go on, let me finish up what I was saying. It's like, if it's such a problem and it's misrepresenting them or making them look bad, like say it's like my whole family is involved in some shit that I'm not involved in, you know, and there's other people who are involved in other things that know me or have known me or whatever the fuck, you know, it's like, and somehow I embarrass them or something. I've moved beyond that. Like, I don't even think that's what it is, man. Because as I said, when you go all the way back, all it's ever been is just to create a state of confusion, instill some self-doubt, and try to lower my self-esteem. Like, it's all it's ever been. And I don't think I should really even take it personally, because I see that being done to a lot of people. And it's really nothing to really bitch about, but it's almost like when you don't, it just happens more frequently. In other words, I don't see any dynamics to put into play to make it stop. I really don't. Because you have to think of the great minds that were involved in this and potentially still are, as far as this secret society / surveillance, intervention. I mean, just all these different sects of things that go on that affect the people who want to be an individual, basically. And I hate mentioning things that happen around me, really, but I come out here and I'll walk 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, complete silence, man, you know, pull out the recorder and it's like, boom, it never fails. Who gives a shit? I don't, but it does make me lose my train of thought constantly. I cannot focus every fucking time I try to do this. So the progress I'm making is really slow, and it's going to be even slower the more all this happens. So I hate it for anybody who's having to suffer through it. Fuck you, fuck off, suck a dick. I don't give a shit. Shouldn't be in my fucking business. Anyway, you gotta come back to like all the great minds that clearly are involved with the mentalities and philosophies that would be beneficial and somewhat benevolent and justified in the midst of participating and trying to covertly improve people's lives. And I just don't really fully agree with all of that. But if there's a level of malevolence going on, manipulating people, you start to question, like, someone with the depth of perception of someone such as Manly P. Hall. Even if someone were to agree or disagree with someone like that, his perspectives seem to be something that I would disagree with as far as trying to covertly improve someone's life, because it comes down to the mentality that bleeds over into what's happening these days. It's not a reality that everyone's going to have all the morals needed. Who gives a fuck about morals? Definitely not business-minded people. And that's ultimately what is driving a lot of this madness. A lot of this shit just has to stop, man. (6/20/21). I want to address a few things, like how the fuck did I even start doing all this so many months ago? Like, what led to all of this? Like, what is the point? What's the goal? And ultimately, the goal is to keep my sanity. Really, that's the main focus of my attention and energy towards this project. It's just for personal usage. It's unfortunate that that can't exist as far as it being personal, but I'll continue to use it to my advantage to take note of my progress and things that I feel are necessary to mention for me not to forget, whatever they may be. And there's no question, no doubt that there's opposition against me doing this. And what ultimately led me to this point, I would say, is the same thing that led me to the point of doing many things that I do. That is the opposition level towards what I say by my fucking self, or what I think by myself. That's where it all began. It's like I became reclusive a long time ago to prevent certain things, and it only made them worse. And everything works off of a level of secrecy in this community, and then you zoom out and then you say society, and then you zoom out and then you say this country, then you flip that around and look at it in the correct way, and you realize that's a business, and then you start getting lost in that tangent and answering questions to how things are able to happen that are happening that no one else is conferring with you about, other than people who are labeled crazy. And it's just this vast amount of bullshit that you get wrapped up in, and nothing ever gets done, and ultimately nothing really can. But yeah, it just comes down to me minding my own fucking business, staying to myself and not talking to nobody. It's like a real problem, and I just don't understand that. I really just don't get it. Like, I'm so beyond indirected conversations and implied perspectives of strangers that I'm just studying them. I create the fucking scenario just as I created the scenario that they intend to capitalize on. I mean, it all just is a representation or representation of some bullshit that, I just don't understand, man. How it's like it's against the rules or something. Because you gotta, if you want to take your feelings out of it and really accept what's going on and don't expect anything and try to rationally conduct your conduct, you have to have some sort of frame of reference to do that with. And it's like you have to look at it like if everything around me is revolving around secrecy and deception, you would have to naturally presume that there's secret societies involved, which is not surprising or even compelling at this day and age. It's really just a big play on words to begin with anyway. But anyway, it's like, if what I do is such a drag on the people immediately around me, you could easily conclude that they're in some sort of society together, whether it be mainstream or secret. And it just boggles the mind that they would let certain shit continue that is so detrimental to them, to the point where you wonder if it even is. So then you start correlating the frequency of certain events based around certain things that you do to try to perceive whether it's based around your actions. And then you just look back as far as you can remember, all the way to the present moment, and realize it's like nothing's really ever changed. With the social engineering I've mentioned in mind, within the larger ratio number, with the people within the larger number in the ratio that is strictly maintained, there's a level of compartmentalization which cultivates and creates an environment around the targets and victims whereby large groups of people immediately around their everyday life have a perception that results from an outside looking in stance, similar to the scenario I spoke of where a group of people could be collecting lists of things that you read and watch and download in regards to research and beliefs and teachings of the understandings of spiritual and religious practices and just influential people and controversial people speaking. The larger this group of people become who intercept this knowledge, with the viewpoint being influenced from the stance of the outside looking in, with no recognition of the frame of reference within the victim or target, having this list of speakers and reading materials had while listening or reading these things. The larger the group of people who would hypothetically ascertain these things, the less room for understanding of the motives of someone listening and reading these things is. Because many influential people and intellectual people and spiritual people still fall prey and victim to all the negative connotations surrounding important subjects, or many of the misconceptions and misinformation. But it's the fact that many of these people were the embodiment of someone searching for truth. So with that in mind, and with knowledge of how the bigger picture was painted per se, it stands to reasonably conclude that much of what these people say are true, or perhaps little of it. But the fact is, with the way things are and the way things will be and the way things always have been, there's value in everything. Even amidst all the misconceptions, you can often find how the seed was sown within that person that created that misconception or difference of opinion of your own. But back to my point about surveillance ultimately affecting social engineering in such a way that cultivates a level of anxiety and anger towards victims and targets of it, seeing as how it's so compartmentalized that the larger end of this ratio that is maintained is compartmentalized in such a way where many of the people that the victim or target would encounter, victim or target just being two of many words, it's just whichever, it's just a matter of labels again, interfering with conceptual analysis of functioning operations within this society, which, like every other controversial and important subject, is protected by levels of connotation that are negative due to conflicting opinions. Because it comes back to the larger concept of the world being ran by a group of people that no one really understands or care to represent as the people who truly do. And it's always the people who lack knowledge of the masses of the societies in which they were placed in. Like on a really pessimistic viewpoint of it would be, it's like our politics are ran by that of mascots who are truly in the costumes that they're running around like jackasses in and have no fucking mind. You know, that's the most pessimistic way to look at it. But it's really a much deeper spiritual approach to life when you fully comprehend it. Because it really, it's just a matter of zooming in and out on a different point on the bigger picture. And it's always the same thing. And before I back all the way out of this area of conversation, I want to mention another important element in regards to surveillance predominantly influencing social behavior and creating misconceptions which lead to a level of anxiety or anger towards unsuspecting people and paranoid victims and or targets. And that is the fact that you have to create scenarios that may or may not be true, that create a understanding for truths that do exist. And a good way to tangibly represent something that happens on a spiritual level as well as a social level. Imagine a scenario in which someone, or more importantly, a group of people around you are collecting a list of things that you have downloaded, listened to, read, with no frame of reference to how you perceive them as you listen or read them, especially in the realm of research. It really is a shame that the larger number of people acquiring that list, as this number of people grows who would acquire this list of information that they perceive you to full-heartedly or wholeheartedly buy into in regards to your research and analysis of, say, religious practices or radical beliefs. These people will create a consensus of what your views of the world are based on a combination of all these conflicting values, if they even care to point out the contradictions. And it's a shame because it's just a magnetized version of the bigger picture as usual, because every happening is a symbolic representation or mirrored event of another. But as I've said before, I'm never going to present myself in such a way to resemble someone who fully knows or comprehends or even memorize all the universal laws. But I'm pretty sure that whoever took the time to write them was very much alike with any kind of mind that would have the respect for the irrefutable evidence of a system set in place that cannot be changed, and that they themselves most likely had nothing to do with the comprehension of such things, and probably contributed it to the presence of grace being embodied through their actions in what we would label I am. But within a lot of these people's beliefs and in the universal law and ways of operating revolve around many factors, one of which being the truth always comes to light. That's why they reveal the truth. That's how evidence can be found. That's the whole reason for manipulation and misinformation having to even put in the work, is for the simple fact of it's all a part of the unavoidable laws of the universe, or whatever label you would give that system in which all the laws of cause and effect regulate its own functions as well as ours. They know it's unavoidable for the truth to come to light. The people in charge respect the way the universe runs. If they didn't, they wouldn't take all the time to put the truth out and then follow it around with misinformation agents. It's because they know if they tried to keep it a secret completely versus operate within a certain range of plausible deniability, it would ultimately all come crashing down, because their control is just an illusion that is a delusion, which is ultimately a mirage due to the lack of nourishment within us. But it ultimately comes down to, now that I've began slowly backpedaling out of that religious tangent that is even controversial to myself, which is who this is for. I want to focus on the logistics aspects of all these previous recordings and how it still stands and supports the existence of a ratio within our population that is revealed to me through all the conclusions I've drawn. And this ratio creates a minority which influences the masses in such a way to where it creates the image in people's head of all the richest people in the world who are profiting off of all the people's ignorance and bloodshed and funding both sides of wars are the ones who run the world, when in fact those people are too small of a number to support the reality and the logistics and the scientific evaluation of the existence of this ratio. They don't fit in the frame to support that. And also the universal law doesn't support that either. Their power doesn't even exist. It's all a farce that is secured by our belief. I mean, all the benefits they receive within the materialistic world and external tangible wealth, absolutely, it's there. But the power isn't actually there. It doesn't support the ratio of what I'm speaking on, especially with the concept of malevolence manipulating benevolence, which is cultivated in a minority of the population. That would mean the smaller number in the ratio would be the benevolent people. So looking at it logistically, it doesn't make sense to say that malevolence is ruling the world and regulating the functions of this universe. It's ultimately the ignorance within that small amount of people in that ratio being oppressed by the misled larger number in that ratio. Everything is just labels. It's just words. But the people who are in that smaller number include a vast number of very intellectual and spiritual people who are even aware of their power in the midst of many people who are nowhere near that realization and most likely will never achieve it. There's still a level of hope being cultivated that fuels power. However, the perception is the problem. The reality that we've all bought into that's created a consensus that conducts our conduct believe that their suppression represents the validation of the power of evil.